I wanted to talk a little bit about brake boosters today. This was the booster that came out of this 330 that I'm working on. And when I first stripped the plating off of it, it showed up to be pretty rusty. I mean, I saw a lot of pits on the surface, and I tried to remove some of the surface finish before I sent it out for plating, but it started to become apparent that the rust was a little bit too far down into the steel. And the problem with this type of plating is with CAD plating, or the gold CAD plating that goes on this stuff, any imperfection on the surface, if it shows up like this little light pitting, it'll show up in the plating, and there's no way to hide it. It's not like chrome plating where you can polish it out and then put well, you know, if you think about it, it's possible, and I've never thought about this. I guess you could copper plate this and then nickel plate it and then cadmium plate it, but that's a lot of surface that goes onto a surface that's not original to what is actually the finish on these things. The original finish on these things was just straight gold CAD plating on top of steel, so I'm not sure if the look would be different. A lot of people, what they do with these cans, because the gold CAD plating or cadmium plating is getting harder and harder to find, simply because, you know, the chemicals that are involved are not very safe and environmentally friendly. So they make this gold paint that they paint these things, but the finish of them is just not very nice. I mean, I know we're dealing with stuff that's supposed to look original and you know, and then at the same time balance that with environmental and balance that with cost and everything, but I just don't like the way the gold paint looks when you compare it to cadmium. So what I did was I actually have a stash of original canisters and actually sent one out for plating, and this is what came back. So this is a replacement can that I had, and you can see it's pretty smooth. It's got a little few fingerprints in it that I can wipe off simply because I had to rebuild the interior of it. But the plating on this this is the original look of it. It's got this iridescence to it, and it's a little transparent, the cadmium and the dye that goes into this thing. So this is what it would look like. Now, it's not perfect. It's got a little imperfections here and there, but that's much better and looks original and looks correct as far as the plating is concerned. It's tough, you know, plating, cadmium plating on these things is difficult because the original plating was put on these canisters when the steel was brand new. So steel definitely, through its years or age, no matter how it's used, is going to change its surface, I guess, texture or tooth. So the way the plating kind of adheres to the steel changes from new to rebuilt. So there's always going to be some variations to it, but I still feel like putting the correct, you know, gold cadmium plating on here looks better than the paint they're putting on these things. I rebuilt this thing by putting new seals and new diaphragms inside. Took it apart with the CAD plated can, and then put it all back together. So that's ready to go. The next thing I needed to take care of, which was this master cylinder. The master cylinder goes on like this. So it goes on the nose of the booster, but what happened was it was in pretty bad shape, and I was hoping, because I had heard that these things are available new, so I called my supplier and said, hey, you know, can you get a new master cylinder for this car? I heard they were coming in from Italy and asked about them, but what I found was it wasn't available. Had to special order it. The fear that I had, which is there are basically 3 types of master cylinders available for a Series 2 330, or rather a 330. And so depending on what year your car was made, what booster it had, and what setup it had, it would depend on what master cylinder it had. And I was afraid to order something sight unseen and then hope that it arrived and then find out that either the ports are different or the fittings are different and all that stuff. And I kind of started to get a little gun shy about ordering something, especially it was probably going to be about $1,000, and I had a master cylinder here that I could possibly use. So what I did was I took the original one, I cleaned it off, took all the rust off of it. You can see how the original one was just all rusty, and disassembled it. So what I did was pulled all the pieces out. Let me get a light so you can see this a little bit better. So I disassembled the inside pistons and then saw that it really just has a few. I mean, I knew that the interior was just a few seals and that I could get, and they're pretty standard. So I went ahead and took it all out, cleaned it up, and then started measuring. And what I found was the master cylinder itself is a 7/8 inch internal bore with a 1-inch bore on the outside, on the back side of it. Was able to take the nut off the back side, disassemble it. There's a couple little tricks to the way these things come apart. But when I looked inside, see if I can get this light to shine the correct way, but it looked pretty good, except for, and I don't know if you could see it, but there's a couple little pits in there that I tried to get out and just clean up. And unfortunately, I think that those pits are not going to come out, no matter how much I try to hone them and whatever. It's not going to come out. So unfortunately, I think the only solution is to sleeve it. So sleeving could be a problem with this because there's what they call a step bore in here. So there's a step in there. So it's 7/8 on the small diameter, and then an inch bore on the back side of it. So the inch bore is not as bad. It's actually not rusty, and I can deal with the inch bore because it's either you sleeve it and you put a 7/8 inch bore in the small section and then a 1-inch sleeve for the outer section. The other problem that you have is on the back side of this, it's threaded. So if you get this wrong, if you get that 7/8 inch bore, if it's not concentric to the bore, you're going to cut into the threads that are on the back side of this. So it's going to take a little bit of machining. It's got to take a machinist that kind of knows what he's doing, pretty precise, and be able to get that center section cut out. Because basically what they do is they cut the cast iron piece out, and then they slide in another bore inside of there with another stainless steel sleeve that's obviously thinner than 1 inch, because if it was bigger, it would cut into the other side of it. Basically, it's a little bit of a complicated setup for a machinist. I spoke to my normal brake guy, and I asked him if he could do it, and he said he wasn't sure. So the only thing I could do is just send it to him and hope for the best. This is the kind of stuff that you have to kind of hope that you can find a solution for, because it would be nice to save this one, because then I could reuse it. Everything lines up, everything fits perfectly, and it'll work. I think if I put new seals on the piston side, I can rebuild this master cylinder and get it working, as opposed to taking a chance with one that's bought new and may not even fit or work the same way. So speaking of seals, the whole deal with this is that these seals, or rather the way these pistons go together, it's very specific to this particular setup. Keeping everything in order is really important, because the way this thing works is that it's a dual circuit, so it's sprung, and as the piston moves, which is this side of it, it pushes against the seal, starts the first circuit, and then forces the second sliding piston into the rear circuit. So there's this progressive braking that happens in the master cylinder, and like I said, it's really tricky if you get this order wrong. So I'm always really careful. That's why I made this little cardboard keeper, so that way nothing would lose. It would always be able to, as I cleaned it, I was able to put everything back in the same order. And then I was going to clean up some of these pieces, these extra pieces that were holding everything together. But yeah, so here we go. Next step of getting the brake system together on this 330. So I got the master cylinder back, and it's been bored out, and it has a nice stainless steel sleeve in there. I had them leave alone the 1-inch seal on the back side of this master cylinder, but they were able to put in a stainless steel sleeve. It's nicely done, chamfered on both ends, so it shouldn't cut the seal as you install it. And this is ready to go. But you know, as always, it seems to be one step forward and 2 steps back. I got the seal kit that I was supposed to get for this master cylinder, which basically, going back to what I had, there's a couple seals here. There's 1, 2, and 3. There are these donut seals. So those are 7/8 inch in diameter. So this kit comes with these donut seals. They'll replace with those, and that's not a problem. But then there's another seal right there. That's this little seal here that sits in the back in the 1-inch bore that sits here. And it's the wrong diameter. It's 1 1/8. So that's not going to work because, yeah, it won't fit in there. And so now I got to just call my part supplier, and he's trying to find a 1-inch seal for it. But yeah, it's just crazy. It's just trying to find parts and get the parts right. And I know what I need, but sometimes the parts that come in a little envelope from, you know, whatever the way they sell them, it's not right. So I don't know what happened there, but you know, we wait for parts. Thanks for watching.